I'm a man who believed that I died 20 years ago, and I live like a man who is dead already. I have no fear whatsoever of anybody or anything.
Gary Webb. I am an investigative journalist, and in 1996 I wrote a series of stories entitled Dark Alliance, which was about CIA involvement in drug trade.
I knew a man who once said death smiles at us all. All a man can do is smile back.
We've opened Skull and Bones, the secret society.
It's so secret we can't talk about it.
What does that mean for America? The conspiracy theorists are going to go
I'm
wild.
sure they are. I don't know. I haven't seen the rest.
Number 322.
I sad duty to report this afternoon that my friend and colleague, Tim Russert, collapsed and died early this afternoon.
I may die in this cell tonight or in the arena tomorrow. I am a slave. What possible difference can I make?
And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know.
Hello, welcome to Already Dead, me and Austin's super show. We put out on both of our platforms, the Underclass Podcast and the No Way Jose Podcast. You will find this there. It's good to be back with you guys. It is a good time to have a parapolitics show. That is for fucking sure. We were talking before the show. It is wild. All the stuff that is like hustling and a bustling out there in the parapolitics world is like shit that was like not even in our periphery like a week ago. Like we weren't even thinking about this shit. We got Syria, Jay-Z, got fucking what else we got? We got drones. I mean, I guess the drone story was already leaking out a little bit. Then we got the UHC assassin. Shit's wild. Shit's getting nuts out there. It is a good time. Stonks going up bigly in parapolitics world.
Absolutely, brother.
Yeah.
My God. Beyond just like, it's funny because we had been like kind of discussing Syria really honestly, I think we had mentioned it the past 2 weeks, but that was probably the one thing that happened this week. I should probably say that it happened much faster than anyone ever would have predicted it would have happened as far as like the actual overthrow of Assad, because like, my God, I mean, the Assad family have been running Syria for like over 50 years. I think it's been a very long time, right? They've been in control of that area. And it's just, to me, like, I mean, you already know we've listened to Scott Horton and read his books and understand, read antiwar.com and are up to date on foreign policy, right? So it's like we're very much like not caught by surprise when some of these things take place, especially when you already know, like, I mean, come on, like the redirection happened under Obama. We know about the sectarian divide between the Sunni and the Shia and how we essentially, not we, but the United States essentially gifted the region in Baghdad and in Iraq to the Shia, to the Iranians, to the Shia dominant. Basically, they took over that region, and it was all because of the consequences of our foreign policy. And so again, as soon as that happened, I mean, the United States leadership realized they had made a devastating mistake and launched the redirection under Obama and switched sides, right? Effectively. and so now we're back on the side of Al-Qaeda, right? Where, the United States is, of course. We're siding with what essentially was the Al-Nusra Front, just rebranded as Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, right? And now they're not even going to be considered a terrorist organization, according to the U.S. potentially, right? So, yeah, I don't know, man. Like,
Yeah.
to me,
Well, hey, that great Israel project's not gonna make itself, you know.
exactly.
Like somebody's gotta fucking clear the land, you know.
That's so
So
funny. I mean, it's not, but it's terrible. But
yeah,
it's funny that you mentioned that because Netanyahu just declared the Golan Heights would be Israel's forever.
yeah, no. Right off the bat, one of the first things he did, he put out like glib little fucking like minute and a half, kind of like sort of professional sounding, like kind of smirking, like kind of, oh, look how great it is, you guys chose freedom. Oh, but this is gonna be tricky. This could be bad. Oh, but guys, also we're gonna take over this buffer zone. This is we gotta defend. We gotta protect ourselves. So we just gotta take this land. And oh yeah, we're gonna destroy your navy, which they completely did. We're going to, what did they attack, some weapon depots as well? So they completely obliterated the infrastructure of the military. So it really is just destabilizing. So they went from a kind of secular, I mean, yeah, I get dictator-ish, but like not too bad. And with like a kind of first world-ish stuff, like a military, the normal things you have, and then we just all gone. All of your we're taking out all the infrastructure in your past government, any sort of weapons, anything you have, and now you're going from whatever that form of government is to this gang rule. Which, I mean, ultimately it's all gang rule, but it's like, let's be real. I would say Bashar al-Assad is probably a preferable ruler to the head choppers of Al Qaeda.
No doubt. Yeah, absolutely, man. No, there's no doubt in my mind that clearly we've empowered the more radical, faction in the region, and this is par for the course for United States foreign policy. I mean, it's what we do, right? And so the playbook is again recycled, and people are still shocked, and that's just, I don't know. It makes no sense to me. You have to pay more attention, or just, understand, right, the systematic approach of the United States and the State Department itself. Because, I mean, you see how the intelligence agencies just co-opt these NGOs. They might just create them out of whole cloth, which happens so often, and they just send them across international, boundaries and basically utilize them to destabilize the region as a proxy force. And it's a consistent recycled tactic. And so once again, I'm honestly, it's been a long time coming that they've been targeting Assad, right? So it's just like, I don't know. I'm kind of surprised at how quickly it took place, but also it's like, the machinations of power are shifting in DC, right? It's like, I don't know, man.
It's this whole situation is like, it totally took me by surprise. I didn't have my eye on the ball in Syria. I knew some new stuff that was going on in Syria, but I wasn't overly concerned about it. Just kind of, yeah, whatever. Like, whatever. We bend down this every now and then. Some, picks up in Syria. It gets settles down, and it's just like, so that's kind of all I attribute that to. This obviously went a very different way. All of a sudden, it is one of those things that I'm kind of almost impressed by our overlords a little bit. It was like, I guess it like makes so much sense now in retrospect. It's like, whoa, what a genius play. Like they kind of swapped, but it's like the obvious play when you're looking at it in retrospect, at least for their interests, because the idea is now, the rumor going around, obviously, I don't believe there's anything. I think people are just kind of speculating just based on the geopolitics of this, is that there may be some sort of plan in place to like, hey, Russia, all right, we're going to chill out on Ukraine. And the reason, and like what you're going to do is not come to Assad's, rescue. You can give him asylum, whatever, but the game is over. But we'll back off on Ukraine, like almost like there was a backdoor or something or other.
Seems like that.
Which, like, if you think about it, it's like, and now what does that enable? This is such a pathway to success for the Greater Israel Project and like that type of stuff. So you are like, holy shit, was this the play all along? I mean, I guess time will bear this out. I don't know, but it's just like that feels like, wow, was really. I mean, don't get me wrong. There are obviously like multiple different groups in play here with differing incentives. So to some degree, there are on the Ukraine side of things people who legitimately had incentive to be involved in some war or whatever. But I think there probably may have been a good other contingent of people out there that were just like, hey, this will keep Russia preoccupied while we work with other things.
Yeah,
Essentially keeps their hands out of the pot because they will be bogged down. And as if it almost makes it look like that was never really the play at all to fuck with Russia. It was more just to buy time. And if anything, they did. If that was the case, they played their part masterfully. That was beautiful Masonic theater. Like, good job. They really did. And you know what? Even to the extent that during this fucking election, you know what the big thing was? Everyone would be on Trump's side, and it would be like, hey, well, it looks like we're going to dial back the tensions in Russia. Yes, I know he's awful on Israel, but hey, you know, that is what it is. But hey, at least I think we're going to dial back Russia. There's some hope there. And it's like, that is what we got. But it was kind of like, in a certain sinister way, it's almost as if that was the plan all along. So it's like, you know what I mean? Like that vibe right there is kind of like, yeah, but that was never, if anything, that was a side issue to get you to swallow that pill.
Exactly.
You know, like,
exactly.
And also to make their plans easier to perpetrate.
Right. Yeah. I read about, Ukrainian fighters apparently helping assist the Syrian, right? The Syrian takeover. And so it's like, while this was all taking place, the U.S. State Department was in negotiations with Russia, and they were agreeing upon Russian targets that would not be on the table, right? That they would not hit Russian targets in Syria. And so Russia was okay with that. Okay, fine. We'll grant Assad asylum, and as long as you don't strike any of our targets within Russia or within Syria, then we'll allow this to take place, and without any sort of reaction to it. But that, yeah, I'm very much with you as far as the Masonic theater is involved with all of this, because it does seem like four-dimensional chess in many ways, where it's like clearly Ukraine became just this, racket, right? Just
which,
this
real quick to back up, that may not be the case. It actually might. The alternative is that it's even worse, and that if anything, they've switched the geopolitical game. There was nothing there being said, and like no handshakes, and it really is just no, still fuck you. So it's like we still have the two fronts of like, oh no, this got worse, and now this is still going to get worse, if not even more abysmally worse. So from a geopolitics perspective, they really kind of nut tapped Russia, assuming that this wasn't allowed. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
yeah,
I mean, that could, if anything, that could either dial back tensions there, or it, really, really raise them. But either way, both of them are kind of like have sinister, sinister, I don't know, tones to them, I guess.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And when the U.S. comes out and says that it was a policy of defense, right, and that we take the side of the new faction in charge in Damascus, and meanwhile we're simultaneously bombing the shit out of Syria, along with Turkey and Israel as well, right? And so like they laid the groundwork. That was very clear. You know what I mean? Like that, Israel had ramped up bombing recently in Syria and had just been kind of like, incessantly bombing them. And so it kind of feels like it was laying the groundwork for some sort of like insurgency, you know what I mean? And that is what definitely took place. And when you look at the individual who's allegedly in charge, forgot his name. I should have wrote it down, but Jelani.
Durka Muhammad Jihad.
Yeah, right, exactly.
I mean, whatever. It's some Al Qaeda guy.
100%, man. Yeah. 100%. He took over after Zawahiri was killed, right? And he was running ISIS back in the day, allegedly. And So it's kind of ridiculous because he's so clearly just some useful puppet for the
Yeah, hasn't
West.
he already said at one point something about diversity being their strength or some shit? I swear he said that. It was like, I mean, obviously it's like probably some just like snippet from some thing he said somewhere. But
Right.
even just the simple fact he would say that, like, why the fuck would some jihadi fucking
telling you.
fighter ever say diversity
It's
is our
marketing
strength?
for
Yeah.
the West. That's
Yeah.
totally what it is. It's to try and gain sort of, it's to try and generate some sort of you know, let's say, like, acceptance, right, from the general public in the West. And I think that that's kind of like been a strategy of this group, especially since after, I think it's Jelani, I can't remember his name at this point, but I know that for certain when he cut ties with Al Qaeda, he apologized to Al Qaeda, and it was all like essentially, you know, it was a common understanding that they came to, right? A mutual understanding where really the ultimate goal was, in order for us to succeed in our mission, for jihad, of course, this is the narrative, for jihad to be successful, right? Then clearly we need to cut ties with the more radical jihadist factions and try and attempt to rebrand and market, you know, at least gain some sort of favor in the perspective, in the eyes of the Western media. And so what they call the international media, right? You know what I mean? So it's clearly like just the mainstream factions, so they can sort of, you know, just give false praise and try and again just play this. We already know that. I mean, how many times have I discussed Mockingbird? So, like, in no way are these mainstream publications not entirely compromised, you know. And so I think that anytime they need to run some of these narratives, some of these false narratives, right, and sort of attempt to gain favor for whatever proxy force or militia group that they're attempting to utilize in some sort of way for their benefit, then yeah, all they have to do is tap their right, their Mockingbird asset, and then the New York Times or the Washington Post will run an article about how great Hayat Tahrir al-Sham is, and how terrible Assad was as a brutal dictator who gassed his own people, even though we all know it was a false flag created by an NGO backed by the CIA.
It was like 3 separate times fucking false flag.
Oh my God.
Because I had forgotten that it happened 3 times, the whole fake
right?
gas tax bullshit. And I forget, like, the problem is that you get so bogged down in the weeds of like trying to keep track of what's what, because it's like I forget each different one. You had to be like know the lore of how to prove that one was bullshit. Former commander of Al Qaeda, so this used to be a commander, Abu Muhammad al-Jawlani. Yeah, that's the new leader of Syria. So there we go. That's who it is. You've brought up NGOs a couple times. I don't know if this will take us too off the beaten path we want to go, but someone did tag us both earlier in a video with Mark Andreessen and talking about NGOs. So although I think he's more referring to like censorship and stuff, so it might be a little boring. It's a little bit long. He's the guy who looks like he's one mustache away from being Mr. Robotnik.
Right. Yeah, that dude is he's definitely kind of involved with the technocracy aspect of things. Like,
which there have been those people coming up lately, which you're like
100%.
You're like probably a better overlord, I guess, but it's still like little like there's some blurring here. We're entering the gray to where now that's going to be becoming the technocrats, who are the leaders, are going to be the people who are in this vague gray area where like they are, I don't know, I guess sort of they're this is the blending of public and private, like so far as like because these are people taking all sorts of government money or in bed with CIA, Mossad, on this contract, that contract. So you're like, is there really a difference between these people and the government? It's hard to tell, which I guess is a little bit of a segue into the UHC thing, which is kind of like a lot of people, have had mixed thoughts, which this wasn't even a thing last week on the guy often, the UHC, the largest health insurance company CEO, He was. There is like an argument to be said that like they are kind of fleecing us, but it is like to some extent it's sort of a free market thing, but it's a corporate thing that's highly regulated, and but this is also being the largest thing. It's literally a product of the U.S. government because they essentially have subsidized these companies into existence by creating these regulations. They have solidified the market and allowed this one, like for example, UHC to thrive. So like, and to some extent, how much different is this guy than a senator? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Like, it's kind of, you get to this point where we're dealing in gray. And now I do want to be very clear. I do not advocate for political violence or ideological violence or whatever. But I will say you may be morally justified. I just don't find it pragmatic. Now, this one I struggle to say that it would be morally justified, but I definitely don't think it's pragmatic. Now, if we had a more clear-cut target, like I don't know, say you literally stereotypically live with Hitler, because people say, "Oh, violence is never the answer." I don't know. I mean, I think sometimes violence is the answer.
Yeah.
The equation I always used to like to use is kind of the idea that like if a cop unjustly arrested you, like if you have the right, you are morally justified, in my opinion, in defending yourself into whatever degree that may take it, whether that means even literally slaying the guy because he's trying to kidnap you, and he doesn't have a right to do so. Just because he's a shiny badge doesn't make that the case. Now, would I advocate you doing that? No, because it's not going to end well for you. And that's kind of my feeling when it comes to ideological political violence. Like, you may be able to make a moral argument, but very rarely would I say that it's pragmatic to do so.
It's self-defeating in more ways than one, right?
Yeah.
And long-term consequences more often than not, and that's I guess you have to weigh the consequences and factor that in, but I'm not, again, I don't want to fall down that slippery slope of I clearly, my primary goal, my priority is to just continue this learning experience, this process, this avenue of exposing myself to more and more information, more and more details that could potentially help fill in the gaps and the holes in my fundamental framework of kind of just my overall perception of reality itself. And I kind of think that if you're not consistently updating your perception of reality, then you're probably not committed enough, right? Or I guess the effort might not be there. And I think that happens often, especially in modern society, because everything's so convenient, and we've been kind of conditioned to be very lazy intellectually in more ways than one as well. And I think that leads us down very many dangerous paths, right? Where we become much more vulnerable and susceptible to being misled, deceived, whatever the case is.
Mm-hmm.
And
oh, sorry, I don't mean to throw you off, but Dr. Corbo said the things they did over freaking bananas alone, which I don't know if that rings a bell for you. I forget the name of the company and it was some of the South America shit you're doing, because I'm actually been reading about it in my I guess you say reading, but it's an audiobook on the Dulles' life, and I wish I could remember. There was the one guy, was it Guatemala maybe? But one of the guys, he essentially was trying to sort of pull some commie shit, I guess you could say, against these companies. But they offed him. And there have been other I know there have been other corporate areas. I believe Chiquita has a bad record. Someone said something about that too. I don't believe it's Chiquita I'm referring to. But there have been, especially in South America, where you end up with these corporations that become essentially basically government, acting as a government. So it is like this idea that simply because it's a corporation that it's not, acting in that way. I think people get binary brain, whether really on both sides, whether you're a commie or you consider yourself a capitalist. That's why I did kind of like the framework of understanding it from an agoristic type look, because I kind of I see there to be a blend where corporations are an issue as well. So it's a gray area, and it really depends. But Yeah, just saying because it's a fucking private company. It's like, well, okay, well they're still fucking killing people, so
Right. It's
I think it's an issue you might
legitimately
want to address.
absolutely, man.
Yeah.
And it seriously is like Confessions of an Economic Hitman, right? Like I think that is such just you mentioned Dulles. It's kind of insane because I read like 3 articles about how, man, it's kind of terrifying, but basically the Rockefellers, they not only, you know, uh, basically founded the United Nations and the League of Nations in many ways, but they also bought the land itself and that they then donated for the construction of the headquarters of the United Nations in New York. And they also had like benefited from it, the Rockefeller Family Foundation and the Rockefeller Brothers Foundation and all these different things. They had benefited directly from the rise in value of the properties around that exact area of the headquarters of the United Nations when it was built. But it'll blow your freaking mind because it's so much more than just these various organizations that they use, philanthropic organizations, right, that they technically use to sort of distort global society. And again, it's exactly what you mentioned, that fine line between public and private, right? And they exploit that line and leverage it to their own benefit in every way. And so insider trading doesn't exist for the elite oligarchs, okay? Like that is just status quo, right? It's how they got their wealth and accumulated their wealth. And so when you look, and by the way, it's terrifying because the Rockefeller Foundation not only are involved in financing the United Nations, the League of Nations, Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, but also the Disclosure Project and the extraterrestrial PSYOP, and also, right, it's the Great Reset, and so when you witness that in all different industry, like they're basically represented in every industry that you could imagine, like even big oil, right? Standard Oil was Rockefeller family interest. And so when you understand all of that, and then you also realize that there was this coexistence between intelligence, organized crime, and these elite oligarchs who were very much in play with these secret fraternal organizations that we speak of very often, which these individuals like Dulles and the Rockefellers specifically come up in the Pilgrim Society, right? So that's one great example. But
yeah, real quick, we're gonna play. I think we should play this because we keep coming back to NGOs and the topic of it. So I do think this may actually be useful. While we were kind of saying that like this guy might be our future technocratic overlord or one of them, right, or one of their menu minions, he does seem to have something valuable to say. Because it does seem that they actually, or at least, are intelligent enough to be putting some of your figures in there, whether that's in purpose, whether that's intentional or not. This goes more to the gray area things, because a lot of the time these guys are going to be people who are kind of capitalistic in mind, or have similar ideas that we have. So they are sort of coming at it from a free market perspective. But I do think that their interests in incentives may have gotten tainted along the way without themselves even noticing. You know what I mean? If that makes sense. So it's kind of like the tangled web you get caught up in. It may not have been an intentional thing for them, and it may not even be really something they think about. But then when time comes, it's like, oh, well, now Mossad needs this. Oh, CIA needs that. And you're like, so it may mess with your decisions. Anyways, I'm rambling, but I guess we should play this. I did want to read this real quick, though. Heart of Glass, 2 of my favorite hosts, 2 of my favorite podcasts. Jose's morning show is fantastic. The Morning Dump. Yeah, guys, I've been doing those like every morning recently, so about around like 10 Eastern, at least this week. Usually I do Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. This week I just happen to have off all week, so I've done one every day. I'll do one tomorrow. I'm going to go over the Shooter's Manifesto. I've been really covering the UHC thing, so pop in tomorrow if you want to get into that. I've also been doing I'm like on part 8 now of a deep dive on the fucking on the whole Dutroux case stuff. So but yeah, anyways, a little bit of self-promotion there. Fuck it. But let's play this video and then we can let's chat about it after.
One of the things that I found really kind of shocking was when they revealed how much money the Democrats had spent on the election and how much money was spent on activist groups.
Yeah, right.
It's like, more than $100 million, right?
Yeah, there's extensive government funding of politically oriented NGOs.
Yeah.
NGO is one of those great terms, like non-governmental organization. All right, like what the hell is that?
Right. What is that? Tell me. I don't know.
Well, it's sort of a charity, but what it really sort of, but most of the time it's a political entity. It's an entity with a political agenda. But then it's funded by the government in a very large percentage of cases, including the NGOs in the censorship complex, like the government grants, National Science Foundation grants, like direct State Department grants, right, direct money. And then, now you've got an NGO funded by the government. Well, that's not an NGO.
Right.
That's a GO.
Right.
Right. And then you've got a conspiracy, like with censorship, then you have a conspiracy because you've got government officials using government money to fund what look like private organizations that aren't. And then what happens is the government outsources to these NGOs the things that it's not legally allowed to do.
Like what?
Like censorship.
Okay.
Like violation of First Amendment rights. Right. The government. So what they always say is the First Amendment only applies to the government. The First Amendment says the government cannot censor American citizens. And so what they do is, if you want to censor American citizens, you're in the government. If you're smart, you don't do that. What you do is you fund an outside organization, and then you have them do it.
Boy.
Right. And that's what's been happening. Right. And
that's like hiring a hitman. Like, it's not okay to murder someone, but you can hire someone to murder someone, and then you're clean.
Yeah. And if you want to solve a murder,
that's hilarious. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. We don't want to get bogged down in that topic, but I have to say it still seems fishy. I don't know if your thoughts on the shooter. I don't really know what the angle would be otherwise, but it just seems fishy. We'll get into that later. I guess tomorrow on my show, if we don't get into it, I will definitely on that. So be going through the manifesto, but I know the first line of even the manifesto.
Not long at all.
I know it's not. I haven't read it. I saw it. I glanced at it. I opened the Substack that it was on.
I pulled it up if you want me to read it. It's not long enough. But it's up to you, bro.
I mean, I know there's a lot you want to get to. Maybe we can come back to it. But honestly, I just wanted to reference the first line. It was said literally the first line was like something like, "I don't want to make this harder on you feds." Because I really respect the job that you guys do. And you're like, and just a minute ago, I was like, it's like, oh, we were just reading about how this guy was super into Ted K. You're like, get the fuck out of here. This dude's not fucking filleting the feds in his manifesto.
Shout down the Did you see him shout at the press just a minute ago?
Yeah. And it said he said something along the lines of like, this is an insult to our. It's kind of like an audible insult to people. Yeah, which I don't know if that was like a. And I saw something today, just recently. I haven't had a chance to look into it, so I need to find more to back it up. But somebody was inferring something along the lines of him explicitly saying, so I don't know if this is legit or not. I got to look into it more. Him saying something about planting evidence or something. So you're like, oh, what's going on here? Like, so is that like insult to intelligence thing? Is that him upset that he thinks he's getting set up? Is that some sort of, is that him referring to some sort of political speech against the healthcare system? Is that what that was an attempt at? I don't know. Was it that? But it's really a show because he's trying to make a show of what he is. Because it is weird. I really almost changed or segued into this earlier when we were talking about Mockingbird, because that was one of the things is like that story kind of put my feelers up. In that, like, I just felt like a lot of the narratives were being guided. For one, there were red herrings when it came to evidence. Like, the biggest thing was, like, the e-bike. Right off the bat, the NYPD, I believe, was being said. It was almost as if they were saying... I could have swore the reporting was saying it in a way that was, like, with certainty he left on an e-bike. Right. And so then everyone won this e-bike goose chase. Nope, no e-bike. And then just the way the narrative has unfolded in that, like... Oh, this is a John Q type narrative. Some guy upset with the health thing, so he's fighting for the man. And it just seemed like between the bullets and the monopoly money, and like it just seemed too fantastical. And then the way it was being rolled out, it just felt like.
Why would he still have all that evidence?
Yes,
on his person?
It felt like we were being guided to a conclusion that like. Don't get me wrong, Dan, once again, hats off to the Empire if that's the case, because this fucking story is compelling. I am really sucked into this story. It's compelling because you're like, part of you is like, is he just really that fucking, I guess for lack of a better word, that fucking kind of cool? Is he just that fucking dope? Are we really looking at Commie Batman here? Is that what we're looking at? Like, this dude took all his wealth and power and devoted himself to fucking being a fucking dope ass fucking killing machine against the fucking capitalists or whatever. Not that I agree with that, but it's like, we can admit that's pretty fucking cool.
Oh, for sure. For sure. I mean, especially considering everything that just happened with the COVID rollout. So, big healthcare, you would have to imagine would be a target of many people who, like, just, for example, during COVID, couldn't say their goodbyes to their family members. I mean, that alone would probably, I would imagine, that would kind of escalate your emotional state. But still, that clearly wasn't the alleged narrative behind
that dude came from money, though.
Yeah, I know.
Because there's people, they're trying to make the case that this guy, I read that it was because the people are alluding to that he had health problems, so therefore, this. Then also they said he had family that health problems, and you're like, this dude came from money, not like a little bit of money. So you're trying to expect me to believe that he had a family member, a close family member, that his family just let, rot in poverty and dealing with whatever medical issues supposedly radicalized him, as opposed to helping him when they came from money, not like little itty bitty money. This dude went to a $40,000 a year prep school.
Private all male school too. Yeah, and was valedictorian.
Yeah, his parents came from, he came from healthcare money. His family ran a string of nursing homes, and he actually worked there for a period of time, but they ran a string of nursing homes, so they literally are direct beneficiaries of health insurance. And this is the guy, which, I mean, so I guess you could say that he fucking had some sort of ethical crisis and, became radicalized, but it's like, I don't know, that it seems to me that there's more to this story and it doesn't make as much sense as we initially thought. So, because that also takes away from this idea that he became radicalized due to either a friend's fucking health issues or his. I also saw somewhere they're saying his back was so fucked up that he couldn't have sex. You're like, okay, but like, what would that have to do with the health insurance? This guy came from money. I guarantee you, if he, and I guess like a lot of people are alluding to that he's 26, so maybe he just got kicked off his healthcare, but it's like, he still came from the kind of money that if it really was, he was having serious health issues, like his family would help. Like, I come from, like, my family is probably maybe upper middle class, but if I came across that sort of dire straits, they would help me. But this is like upper class, and so you're telling me that they wouldn't help their own son? I mean, maybe there's some sort of falling out that we don't know. I'm just saying it doesn't make fucking sense.
No, not at all. Yeah. And you saw how, like, allegedly people closest to him were like reaching out, right, on Twitter, right? You saw those supposed like, basically they were saying, like, they haven't seen him in like 3 months, and like,
just disappeared to Hawaii.
And Hawaii, by the way,
kind of like Hinckley.
It's exactly what it is, and exactly like Ryan Routh, man. Which is insane, because he was like very nearby.
Which, to be fair, this is a whole fucking state, so it's like, just disappeared to a state's not too crazy, but still, you're like, my feelers go up. That's weird. I mean, just even not even putting up the parallels to this happening in like Hinckley and the Rouse situation. Just a simple fact that this guy shortly before, like right before this all happened, he disappeared for a few months to Hawaii, and he just like basically broke contact off with his friends, and they're all just kind of like, at least because I saw multiple. Which once again, this could just be Mockingbird saying it up, because it seems to be all these. It just seems to be, kind of being pushed a certain way. So I don't know to what case. Obviously, I haven't verified every eyewitness, fucking person they talk to or friend or whatever. But it just feels fishy.
One of the responses was, "Hey man, I need you to call me. I don't know if you're okay or just in a super isolated place and have no service, but I haven't heard from you in months. You made commitments to me for my wedding, and if you can't honor them, I need to know so I can plan accordingly." And then somebody commented, "I don't think he'll be able to make the wedding." I fucking died, dude. So stupid.
Yeah.
But
weird.
When you actually look at all of these different factors that play into this guy's alleged background, I don't know, man. Like, I'm very much questioning this entire story. I'm extremely skeptical. I would like to get more details as far as his family is concerned, just to know, like, I'm not sure. I haven't read enough about it because, like I said earlier, privately, like, I've just been reading a bunch of court documents lately about other things, so I haven't quite done the deep dive yet, but I have read a few different articles, and then just what I found on Twitter, which very, I mean, come on, right?
This person says, I wonder if Mangione was part of a gifted program. Word is that's where they do MK Ultra nowadays.
Absolutely.
I forget what they said. What didn't he went to what UPenn? I believe he was the valedictorian of his prep school. So he's a valedictorian of his prep school. I believe
too, which
he's got a master's and a bachelor's. Like, you know, look at the dude. I mean, no homo. The dude had like cum gutters. Like, dude is like he's like ripped. He's like, you know, he's got weird interests. I mean, I don't know. I'm not saying all of these things make someone a fed, but it's like, it is kind of like exactly, you know, if we were describing, you know, kind of what they're looking for. You also look at like his grandpa, apparently, I guess, was buddies with Pelosi's dad. Which I'm not saying that, like, I'm not like making some sort of crazy generational like conspiracy. I'm just saying to give you a reflection of the kind of family he comes from. They're like politically. I don't know if I'd say they're politically connected, but they're in the mix. They are they are a connected family. They know people. They're well off. You know, they own a lot of stuff. You know, so, he's also like a really smart kid it was athletic. Like
130.
So, you know,
like. Was he not a teaching assistant at?
He was a
Stanford
tech guy, I think.
In Palo Alto at Stanford. I'm almost positive that he was a teaching assistant, and basically only for like 3 months or something. But this was like, I think, on his LinkedIn. But he had designed lesson plans and even like taught artificial intelligence classes to like gifted high school students. Which again kind of like implicates the gifted program if that were actually happening, which you know, who knows? Why wouldn't they utilize some sort of mind controlled asset to right to kind of send in to potentially teach a few of the you know, of the psychological, I guess. I think it's interesting because clearly this guy was not at all like, why the hell was his family wondering where he was for 3 months? You know what I'm saying? I think that that in itself raises a lot of questions, and especially when you think about Tamerlan Tsarnaev and all of these different individuals who have been kind of patsied in many ways, and they couldn't account for loss in time. They very much became isolated in many ways, and because of that fact, and they were being essentially psychologically tortured. And once I read Dr. Robert Duncan's take on using EMF and using essentially electromagnetic frequencies to tap into some sort of psychological mind control technique, and that they could actually leverage these tools even from outside your own home and affect you with subliminal messages while you're sleeping. I mean, that's extraordinary. And for people who aren't aware of those things, read up on what they're doing with modern MK Ultra techniques, because they didn't stop. And it's, again, I mean, how many things have we covered where it's so obvious that MK Ultra went underground and they just have attempted.
Ooh, I was listening. There's a really good roundtable. I haven't finished it. It was on William Ramsey. We put it on his feed, but I believe it was put out originally on somebody else's. But he does that. But anyways, there was a round table with him and some other parapolitics people, and they were talking about not LaVey, Aquino, and they were, for some reason, they got to talking about the Star Wars.
John Brisson, right?
I don't
John
know.
Brisson, was that his guest? Because he's legit,
sure.
Dude.
It wasn't it was William was appearing on somebody else's show, but he posts those.
Oh, okay.
But anyways, it was one of the guests brought up that, I guess, you know, the Star Wars I forget what it was called. You know, who was it? Was it Reagan that did the Star Wars project, or I forget what it was called, Reagan. Star Wars project, what the fuck it was called, but that was like they legit were doing the Star Wars shit. Apparently, I guess like somewhere in the realm of like 50% of the budget for that was like off books, and I guess the rumors are that became a lot of the stuff you were just talking to, which were the more like technological side of MK Ultra type stuff. So things like the different trying to put voice of God, the different radiation, just like different essentially blending the which is, I guess, I don't know how, I guess this is how they sort of made it. It was sort of tied into the Star Wars stuff. It was kind of the sci-fi technological, but like also MK Ultra stuff. So they were definitely, it seems like they were doing it at that time. That was the rumor going around. So yeah, just the point being is that they have these off the books things, and they do just find different ways to bring MK Ultra up in other places. Just like we think it, presume that it, went underground in the cults as well. But then it also, I think, reared its head in other places where it was a little bit sort of more official, but not really, kind of like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. That's 100% what I think as far as like modern MK Ultra. I think again, like James Holmes is the perfect example. I think the way that they had essentially, I think that they had kind of like psychologically destroyed James Holmes. And when he was on like a concoction of psychedelic drugs, essentially, when he came into the courtroom and was like just out of his fucking mind. And when I had mentioned to you privately, I was researching the Delphi murders.
Hey, what did Holmes, or what was his name? Was his name Holmes? I forget, the Batman
James
shooter.
Holmes.
What was his? What was he studying? What was his?
Let me pull it up because it's actually really important.
Because I believe there was sort of a parallel, very very loose parallel, but I remember reading through something about this guy. Which I'm going to close this because I don't know why we even have that up anymore. But there was a parallel. There was I guess a kind of a dot connect here, in that he had something similar. Like he originally was planning on majoring in something that sounded similar to what
that was my
Holmes
first
is
reaction.
doing. Yeah, you caught that too. Yeah. I mean, he didn't end up doing it, but I was just like, I just found it like, oh, that immediately was like, oh, when I saw that, like, I mean, obviously nothing came of it. He didn't actually end up doing it, but who knows? Maybe he took some classes.
He was still teaching artificial intelligence to those gifted high school students as a teaching assistant at Stanford and Palo Alto, that's MK Ultra Central. Right. Yeah. That is ground zero for MK Ultra, man. And so I don't ever take that lightly whenever something is coming out of Berkeley. And especially considering everything I researched with Manson and Patty Hearst and Sink to Freeze, my God, man. But yeah, so James
real quick, guys, we are in the call-in portion of the show. If you would like to call in, you can do that at 941-281-5857. You can also do Rumble rants on Rumble, and if you are patrons of me or Austin, we put out a link every time on our Patreons that give you a link to where you can be a talking head alongside me and Austin, and do kind of a video chat and kind of hang out. So that's $2 on my end. I believe it was either 2 or 3 for you. So just that's out there if you guys want to do it. We have, you guys see every now and then some people come on for that. But yeah, it's definitely underutilized. So feel free to use that, guys. But yeah, we are in that portion. So sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. What were we talking about again? We were talking about
James Holmes and his connections to neuroscience and also DARPA, right? Which that is much more of a smoking gun than what we have here with this Luigi character at this moment. But still, the connection there to this sort of artificial intelligence, neuroscience background, right? And again, kind of paving the way for this sort of psychological control mechanism, and it just makes sense that would kind of be par for the course in regard to these programs and these different classes that some of these individuals have taken, and especially in context with James Holmes. And that's why essentially he was like, they basically said that as he descended into madness, he was presenting this different character assessment profile than what essentially was at odds with the elaborate spectacle, right? And so basically, well, he was kind of presenting an elaborate spectacle, and I think that was very much a part of his programming, and also a part of the psychological control through the use of drugs, and also through the use of these modern techniques, which happens through like this man, what is the name of this program at DARPA is just absolutely ridiculous. But I'll get to it because it doesn't take very long. But basically, the Denver Post, they published this article in 2012 in August, and they said that it essentially they're casting doubt, like I said, on this official narrative surrounding James Holmes and how he kind of lost his mind. And so they say that basically this spectacle that was playing out in court, because again, as if you read up on it, you realize that he was sort of in this kind of like hypnotic trance when he was first present in his trial. And so it says about 2 months before James Holmes sat wild-haired, bug-eyed, and dazed as a judge told him he faced murder charges, James Egan Holmes was supposed to give a presentation on a topic so complex that most people would barely understand its title. Near the same time, he would have been discussing microRNA biomarkers with doctoral students and faculty. Authorities say Holmes began amassing the cache of guns and ammunition he used to carry out one of the worst mass shootings in U.S. history. So the University of Colorado in Denver, these officials claimed that they won't say whether he gave that presentation, but listed on the syllabus for a class called Biological Basis of Psychiatric and Neurological Disorders. In any case, Holmes was by then already slipping out of the rarefied world of intellect and scientific discovery that for much of his 24 years had seemed embedded in his DNA. And he takes an oral examination on June 7th and dropped out of this elite CU Denver neuroscience graduate program on June 10th. And so in 2010, his resume, he calls himself an aspiring scientist. The student experience he listed at that time, as he applied for lab technician jobs online, is this impressive catalog of research in neuroscience, the study of the brain and nervous system, digitization of mouse muscle, neuronal mapping of the zebra finch, dissection, staining, and photography of hummingbird flight muscles. As a lab assistant at the University of California, Riverside, James Holmes picked up skills such as dissecting cells and using dye to stain biological tissues before examining them under a microscope, according to this resume. So no one at CU Denver and few in the broader neuroscience community would talk about Holmes directly, but directors of CU's neuroscience graduate program described the environment Holmes had entered and was withdrawing from as intellectually demanding and rewarding. Every year, 100 or so budding scientists applied to this CU Denver doctoral program in neuroscience. Ultimately, only about 6 are admitted to this program. And in 2011, Holmes was one of those 6. So then, James Holmes was chosen for inclusion in a National Institutes of Health grant program designed to train the best and brightest for careers as neuroscience researchers. He wins this merit. Holmes won merit scholarships to the University of California, Riverside, and graduated in 2010 as an honors student in neuroscience. And that was according to the school officials. And so at UC Riverside, Holmes was at the top of the top, according to the chancellor, Timothy White. And he said this at a news conference after the shootings. He said, he really distinguished himself. And then NBC5 Chicago even reported that based on UC Riverside recommendation letters submitted to the University of Illinois, Holmes graduated in the top 1% of his class with a 3.949 GPA. And the UCR letters also described Holmes as a very effective group leader and a person who takes an active role in his education and brings a great amount of intellectual and emotional maturity into the classroom. So this is the most interesting part. you probe deeper into the background of James Holmes, and you stumble onto this theoretical, essentially, it seems like dissociative identity disorder through drug-induced temporal illusions. That's what it really seems like.
We're talking about James Holmes and kind of making a very, 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 very loose connection between that and the UHC shooter. Because I believe the UHC shooter or assassin was, I don't know if it was neuroscience, but something like that he initially was looking to get into.
Well, I know, like I said,
go ahead.
He was teaching classes on artificial intelligence. So, like,
yeah.
He had a legitimate
that's different
background.
than neuroscience. I'm just saying.
For sure.
I'm just saying it may not be exactly the same, but it was close. And I believe it was something like neuroscience is one of the things he initially was wanting to major in, I guess, when he first went to school and then didn't
Neurolinguistic programming for sure.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, I don't know. I think that really his past association with government-funded research projects, I think at the Salk Institute, by the way, of all things, which has direct links to DARPA and the DoD, and so yeah, I kind of think that it becomes a lot more obvious that James Holmes was clearly kind of psychologically controlled, far more than any of the evidence we have on this Luigi.
Mm-hmm.
What's his last name?
Mangione.
Mangione, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's a fun name to say, Luigi Mangione. Yeah, he's
the Peak Performance or the Peak Soldier Performance Program. That was the name of the DARPA program that James Holmes was a part of, and it involved creating brain-machine interfaces for battlefield use, including human robotic bionics for legs, arms, and eyes. And DARPA, of course, was working with the Defense Science Office on projects that included the medical research community. And so, yeah, it was James Holmes' mother, who, by the way, was also a psychiatrist and was a psychiatric nurse, I believe. And his father, Robert Holmes, he received a PhD in statistics in 1981 from the University of California at Berkeley, right? And worked for this San Diego-based HNC Software Incorporated. And this was known as a neural network company and would allow machines to interpret oral and visual stimuli to think like humans. So the Coretronic concept was developed by HNC Software's chief scientist and co-founder, Robert Hecht Nielsen. And this company would then later on merge with the Minneapolis-based Fair Isaac Corporation, FICO, a computer analysis and decision-making company. So Robert Holmes, the father of James Holmes, he works at FICO, right?
Of course he does.
Yeah. Also emerged that, by the way, when he was 20, worked as a camp counselor at Camp Max Strauss of the Jewish Big Brothers and Sisters of Los Angeles. And according to the Jewish Journal, among other tasks, Holmes helped to teach boys between the ages of 7 to 10 archery. And in one more unusual detail, and then we can
real quick. I did want to point out we've let it go for too long. By 11 the Butcher, thanks for the Rumble rant. Send us a Doge doggy emoji with the glasses on, shaking his head. So appreciate that. That was sweet of you. Thanks for giving us money. Yeah. All right. Sorry. Keep going.
No, you're good. Just the last note, really. And by the way,
and then we need to get we got two more things. We got again the Jay-Z thing real quick. Yep. That's just a quick little thing, and then I know you're not gonna like if we don't get in the Delphi murders. I want to hear about Delphi murders. You were excited to tell me the Delphi murders, but let's all right. Let's last point on James Holmes and how much he glows.
All right, so James Holmes. James Holmes is also the grandson of Lieutenant Colonel Robert Holmes. Mm-hmm. And he's one of the first Turkish language graduates of the Army Language School.
Did you know Mike Benz is the grandson of James Jesus Angleton's one of his like top guys?
Really? I was not aware of that. Oh my god!
I just did a recent one of my morning. Sorry, I just had to one of my recent morning episodes. I just did a is Mike Benz a Fed? I went into that. And because I don't know if you've ever heard people saying that. I don't know much about the guy, to be honest. So, if anything, I thought it was interesting because I'm kind of coming at it from a fresh perspective. I've had people tell me he is, but then on the other side, I also have buddies who like him, have had him on their shows, and blah. So I'm like, I don't fucking know. He had just gone on Rogan, and then like everyone was going on along the line about what a Fed he is. So I found a few threads. I kind of analyzed their information, kind of gave my honest takes, and I'm kind of was just left with like, I don't know. I don't see anything like bulletproof. There were definitely some weird things he did that they're a little bit suspect, and so he glows a little. Is kind of where I'm at. Do I know if he's a Fed? No. Could he not be a Fed? Possibly. I don't know. Maybe he's not a Fed. But I also wouldn't be the least bit fucking surprised if he was. Right. But point being, that was one of the weird things that came up. Somebody like literally went into obituaries and all that stuff, and like I went through the sources to show that like, yeah, like his granddad worked for James Angleton.
That's crazy, man.
In like the OSS, I think.
That's insane, dude.
You're like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I guess maybe that's just his fucking granddad. I don't know.
Man,
it doesn't bode well when I'm trying to decide if you're a Fed. I'm like, what the fuck? Yeah, sorry. Complete aside. I just was like, that's a fun little tidbit of information I know now. I can't remember the name of the guy that worked for him, but yeah, no, his granddad worked for James Angleton, which was like the double agent guy, the guy who was always looking for double agents for Dulles.
Gladio very often, and basically in being responsible for helping kind of pave the foundation for the Gladio networks for the rat lines. Man, it's kind of strange to hear that, but I read all about Angleton's role in that in the Nazi rat lines and Operation Gladio being set up basically, and very, very close to Dulles, at the time. But I think the Monterey Language Institute, the Defense Language Institute in Monterey, California, I'm almost positive even had ties to Oswald, if I remember correctly, before he went to Russia on that fake defector program, which is absolutely insane. Before he went to Katsugi Air Force Base or whatever in Japan, I think, and that was before he was sent across on that fake defector program. But anyway, he was brought back on like an intelligence flight as well, which is completely insane. But that goes, kind of without saying in reality, because
so did Stressmeyer.
Yeah, exactly, man. Like, holy shit. It seems to be, again, just a part of the playbook, right? And as far
when
as
you're a Gladio asset, you get escorted right on back where you need to go.
Crazy, man.
Yeah, it's weird how that works. Yeah,
right. Yeah. So graduating from the Turkish language class in 1948, James Holmes' grandfather, Robert Holmes, spent a career in the Army, which included more than a few intelligence-related assignments. Typically, U.S. military officers conversant in Turkish served with either the Defense Intelligence Agency or the Central Intelligence Agency at either the U.S. Embassy in Ankara or the Consulate General in Istanbul, or both. And this Terence Sejnowski, the Francis Crick Professor at the Salk Institute for Biological Studies and the Director of the Computational Neurobiology Laboratory, in an interview with Cognitive Science Online in 2008, had the following comment about recent studies of the human brain. Alan Newell, cognitive psychology researcher at the intelligence community, linked Rand Corporation, which, by the way, was very well represented in Laurel Canyon. It's so crazy to hear, like, basically the architects of the PNAC doctrine and the new Pearl Harbor were hanging out in Laurel Canyon, right near Lookout Mountain Laboratory, where all these bodies are dropping. It's very strange. But you look into Frank Zappa and then all those connections with weird scenes inside the canyon and Dave McGowan, and yeah, you'll be absolutely just mind blown by the end of it. But anyway, so to finish this off, this Alan Newell, who was linked to the Rand Corporation and this cognitive psychology research, once said that when AI, artificial intelligence, was founded, not enough was known about the brain to be of any help. And in the early 1980s, symbol processing was the only game in town. That has changed, and we now know a lot about the brain, perhaps more than we need to know. So I think honestly, I think mind control is probably been, I think the techniques themselves have probably just evolved over time to such an extent to where it's something that might be very difficult for us to even comprehend. You know what I mean? Like the level of
we're at a point
control.
where one aspect of this might be Jay-Z and Diddy banging kids in VMA parties. How that might play into that whole component of control, influence, that type of stuff, which I guess that's a hard segue into. I mean, that's really all there is to that one. I mean, I don't know if Jules, I don't know if you want to bring that up, but that's all. At this point, I believe it's just a civil suit. I guess I believe Jay-Z's lawyer made a thing about like saying, hey, basically kind of like, hey, fuck you. Why don't you make it a criminal if you're so serious about it? Which I mean, obviously that could be just them posturing to kind of act indignant. But
I've heard that the reason that a lot of these cases are filed in civil court is because of essentially the ability to prosecute sexual crimes in criminal court is much more difficult to get a prosecution in criminal court for sexual crimes than it is in civil court. That's what I've heard many different people claim. But either way, it's like, it does raise some questions, right? At the very least, like I would say at the very least, you have to wonder why you would file these claims in civil court,
Yeah.
But still, it happens so often that, it doesn't necessarily mean that, of course, I don't think.
I mean, it could be a statute thing or something. I don't know, because this happened in 2000. Maybe they know they don't have much evidence because of when it happened. But either way, as far as I know, that's like we don't have really any sort of source or proof for this. Really, it's just simple as someone has actually accused him in a lawsuit. And I looked into this before. That's really all there was to it. There was an accusation. I mean, maybe we'll find out more to come, but I think it is something that seems to line up with what a lot of us have been thinking. This wouldn't be least bit surprising to me. But I guess fuck it. Let's just jump right into the Delphi murders, because I don't think if you have something else to say about that, we can. But I did just want to drop it because that's really all there is to it. I mean, it could be true, it could not. I wouldn't be. If anything, I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if it's true. I mean, it also could be something to make us look stupid later. We're like, oh, you guys, oh, you idiots, sought Jay-Z, and then we're out just fucking molesting kids in fucking VMA parties. Look how crazy you guys look. But I mean, I'm not buying it. I mean, I wouldn't be the least bit surprised, but it's yeah. Anyways, the Delphi murders. You've been really spurging about want to tell me about those. You seem to think I'll be really into those. Apparently, you've had a big old case of mission creep in your latest attempt at an episode. You started off, you wanted to do the Hosanna stuff, which was the scandal that the True Detective season 1 was very, very loosely based off of. I guess then you got on some sort of tangent about the Delphi murders, and then you got on some other sort of tangent about, I forget what you called that one. Scandal. Yeah. And then so now you're like, fuck. Now you got to reevaluate where you're at, because you're like, I can't put all of this in one episode.
I realized that yesterday. I realized that by the time I was at basically the appeals process of of the Hosanna case, which was Louis LaMonica had appealed the original conviction, and I was reading through the alleged facts within the appeals case, even though it was denied, right? But still, it was fascinating, and of course, it left me with far more questions than answers, which is always frustrating, especially with cases like this specifically. But again, it's like, how much can you truly trust the word of his defense attorneys and the individual who allegedly who's been convicted and is serving life sentences for raping his own children? So I mean, it's like, it's kind of hard to take his word for it, but it is also like, again, something that you can't leave out of the story, right? So it's like, because his own sons recanted their statements and it's tell a very similar story. And they're much older at that time, like 18 and 20. But anyway, I got into that, and I was researching that yesterday, and I realized that I'm going to have to add more of this than I realized into this story. And I'm not even at the Delphi murders yet. And I thought, well, I could use kind of, just sort of like a rundown of the Country Walk scandal as maybe an introduction, and then lead into Hosanna, and then finish off with the Delphi murders, but it's impossible, man. There's no way that I can do that, right? And make a kind of a comprehensive, detailed case against the official narrative, So, yeah, but it's okay because I think it's necessary to do an episode where I focus on Country Walk as well, or maybe I just do an entire episode on Delphi. We'll find out, but I'll make that decision by tomorrow. But anyway, so with Delphi, I think it's crazy because first of all, consider the fact that the term itself is based in the occult, right? The oracle at Delphi, and I think that it's important to at least make that connection, especially when you realize the case that's being made that questions the official narrative. And so, to introduce the case, just the bare bones of it is these two young girls, Abigail Williams and Liberty German. She went by Libby, I believe, but the murders of Abigail Williams and Liberty German have become known as the Delphi murders because they occurred in Delphi, Indiana on February 13th, 2017. And so originally their bodies were discovered near the Monon High Bridge Trail, part of the Delphi Historic Trails. And the girls had disappeared for at least 24 hours, I believe, after they had gone, and law enforcement had basically pinged one of the cell phones. And the last time that they had really, it was like a good 24 hours before they discovered the bodies, because they discovered the bodies legitimately on Valentine's Day, right? The very next day. But the murders received a lot of media attention at the time because there was a video that was released that showed it only showed like 3 seconds. The video in itself was like 43 seconds long, but was never available to the public in its full capacity. And so the 3-second video only shows this one guy in like a jean jacket and blue jeans, and it shows him saying, "Go down the hill." That's all you kind of hear him say, and he's telling the girls this, right? And this individual, Richard Allen, he became the primary suspect in this case, and you start to realize how much it falls apart very quickly. It's kind of insane because I came into this with no sort of prior knowledge, right? And so when I was exposed to this, I just kind of off top just sort of, okay, let's find out if the original perpetrator is truly guilty, right? And we'll try and assess the credibility of the allegations there and the evidence that's available. But it very quickly implicates this sort of wider network and implicates this individual, Arthur Allen, or Richard Allen, as I think Arthur Allen was the Zodiac in David Fincher's movie. But anyway, but yeah, it implicates that Richard Allen is a patsy, and his sentencing hearing is happening this very month, which I found also very at the very
when
least.
did these? I didn't see the date on these. When did these happen?
So the murders themselves took place in 2017, but all of the court cases are essentially had taken place in 2023. A lot of the different convictions were I believe happened in 2023.
Okay, so this is very, very much current news, essentially.
Yeah. And so I went in, I read the actual court documents, and that is worthwhile. My God, I couldn't even imagine what the allegations that were being made by federal agents that were on a task force that were investigating ties to ritual murder and neo-paganism. And so when I discovered that was potentially a thread that I needed to tug on, right? Because of how certain the term, as far as like
now what made them think neo-pagan? Because I know nothing about these. I feel like I've maybe heard some people mention them in passing, but I don't know. I just assumed there was something with some deep lore. I didn't realize it was current events that we could kind of get on the ground level now.
Right. So it's important to understand that, this sort of reconstructed ideological faith system of faith that kind of involves the Norse pantheon of gods, and also um, this neo-pagan philosophy, which is just basically just means that it's a reconstructed version of ancient paganism, right? That's all it means. And there are essentially various factions that have different interpretations of this ancient pagan philosophy, and they tend to utilize, um, you know, beyond committing ritual blood sacrifice, they tend to also use ancient runes, right? By as far as like,
What about the murders
no, yeah, I'm
were
getting to it. I
indicated?
promise,
Okay,
I
because I'm
promise.
just like,
The murders
what about the
themselves,
state of their bodies made
it was
anyone
the
think it
crime
was
scene, right?
ritualistic? Yeah.
Yeah. And so basically, the federal agent himself, inevitably, he raises the question, claiming, well, he says flat out, he believes that the crime scene was staged and that the bodies were moved and clothing had even been taken. And so, but I think it's kind of important to just lay down the foundation, because the Independent does a good job with an introduction, I think, and they basically set it up by claiming that this Delphi murder case, of course, it included the killings of these teenagers, Libby German and Abby Williams, but in the court documents released, the 50-year-old local man maintained his innocence, right? And instead claimed that the murders were carried out by a pagan cult hijacked by white nationalists. So his defense was already keying on individuals that could prove out that case. And again, reading the actual court documents, there's a case to be made. And so members of a pagan Norse religion called Odinism, and that is a very prominent factor, because it seems as if there are various groups who practice this theological doctrine based in Odinism, and that falls within
What was the name of the cult, Austin?
It's called, damn it, I keep forgetting it. I have it right here. Hold on, I'll pull it up, because it drives me insane. It's like a weird combination of different the Vinlanders. That was it. I want to like I want to call it something else every time that I read that, but yeah, the Vinlanders is what they were actually called.
Okay.
But they were an Odinist cult, and when I read through the actual court documents, yeah, here it is. Vinlander is a word interchangeable with those that practice Odinism. As State Trooper Roland Purdy stated in his deposition, all members of Vinlanders are also Odinists. Basically, the Vinlanders are a white supremacist group consisting of Odinists, Brad Holder,
Hammerskins. They are by associates and previous members of the skinhead group Outlaw Hammerskins. The Hammerskins have come up in other ones. Now, I don't know if there's different in the Outlaw Hammerskins. I'm pretty sure when I was remember when I interviewed David Galetti, I think that was the main thing he and not that means anything. I'm just kind of like, I don't know. I mean, Hammerskins might be something as like a title reused in multiple ones, because this one's called the Outlaw Hammerskins, but still,
right,
kind of piqued my ear. I wonder if there's something there. But anyways,
no, absolutely. So their bodies were found on this individual's property by the name of Ronald Logan, and I watched his interview. Actually, he did an interview with a local news publication at the time. He's an older guy. I think he was like 84. But he died.
Hey, real quick, back not to. I just really do want to hone in this and make sure we get on the body. I know you said they moved clothes around and stuff and changed the scene, but was there any details that made them think? I'm just kind of curious, like something substantive to point to before we keep spiraling.
No, I'm with you, buddy.
Yeah,
there's a lot of details to it as well, so I can very easily get carried away. But
so I mean, I feel like that's the brass tacks that people want.
It is the most important
before
part.
Because that would be the first thing to lead us to believe there might be something more going on here.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, no doubt in my mind. But so this FBI agent, he notes that pieces of the clothing from one of the victims were missing, and that it appeared the girls' bodies were moved and staged. There were no visible signs of a struggle or a fight. And so the agent also suspected a souvenir had been taken by the killer, and that it was common for perpetrators to memorialize their crime scene with these pictures. But so the FBI agent said investigators did recover fibers and unidentified hairs at the crime scene. He also noted that 77-year-old Logan, an individual I named Ronald Logan, who owned the property where the bodies were discovered, appeared to be in good physical condition, and his voice was not inconsistent with that of the voice captured on German's phone, Libby German. The agent also confirmed that video on German's phone was actually, again, like I said, 43 seconds long instead of only the 3 seconds available. So the agent notes an interview with Logan's relative in which the relative tells the agent that Logan called them the morning of February 14th and asked them to lie about where he had been the previous afternoon. This was prior to the bodies being discovered. He allegedly asked the relative to say they drove to a Lafayette aquarium store at a time that matched when Williams and German went missing around 2 p.m. on the 13th of February. So, the agent said the relative believed the original image of the suspect looked like Logan as well. And so, the important parts of the actual bodies themselves, they come from the task force. And so these these federal investigators. And so overwhelming evidence in the case is basically members of a pagan Norse religion called Odinism, hijacked by white nationalists, ritualistically sacrificed Abigail Williams.
Fire Pixie saying Abby was redressed in Libby's clothes. Yeah. And the other one seem to be posed in very odd positions. Because this is what I'm trying to get at. What is
branches, brother? So I'm about to get into
it. Oh fuck! You telling me? Are you telling me fucking
True Detective, man?
Yeah, True Detective voodoo fucking branches bullshit. Oh fuck! Yeah, okay,
I'm not fucking with you.
All right,
so it's amazing.
You got me back in. I was like, what the fuck is going on here? Okay. What? Just out of curiosity, how did they die? Did they? I mean, I don't know if you're like
their
intentionally
throats were slit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they were in certain positions. Throat were slit. That was the only sign of trauma. Was slit throat.
Yeah.
Okay, weird. Was there any signs of sexual assault?
No, they claimed that, they tried to claim in the trial that was the inevitable goal of Richard Allen was to sexually assault them. But of course, I don't believe that to be the case at all. But again, I think it's important that these federal investigators on the task force, which this task force specifically was prioritizing investigating the Odinist connections to these murders at Delphi.
Dr. Corbo says one of them laid out like the Hanged Man tarot card.
Yes, man.
The card Odinists associate with Odin on the Yggdrasil. Yeah, which is for those who don't know, Odin, the lore behind Odin is that he hung himself. He's the hung god. He's the hanged god. He hungs himself to Yggdrasil. I believe he also sacrifice an eye at that time. Actually, that was something different. That was to Mimir or some shit. But anyways, there's obviously lots of people. A lot of people make parallels between him and Christ, and you can take your own takes on that. Whatever. I'm not religious, but it is interesting that he is kind of like people did sacrifice to Odin. It seems to be implied. And his whole thing was sacrifice to and coming back alive in a few days or whatever. So Odin gave his eye to the well of Mimir for wisdom. Yeah. So he kind of sacrifices for different things. I think you supposedly got something dying from Yggdrasil. I forget. I got runes from hanging on Yggdrasil. So it's kind of the idea of sacrifice and reward. There's bigger themes obviously at play. Which obviously occult wisdom from sacrifice.
Yeah. And according to the court documents, Odinism is the pagan religion referenced, and its followers are called Odinites. Odinists are enamored of Viking Nordic culture. Evidence supports that at the crime scene, these murdering Odinites left behind obvious signatures, symbols in the form of runes. These runes were formed with sticks, fashioned with tree branches, and painted using the blood of Liberty German. Sticks and tree branches were deliberately, carefully, and proficiently placed on each girl in a certain arrangement, mimicking certain runes. At least one of the branches appeared to have its end cut off cleanly by some type of tool, like an electric saw, providing proof of a preconceived plan. Additionally, the blood of liberty German was used as the paint to mark a tree with an ancient rune that looks similar to the letter F. With a simple Google search, these runes would be identifiable as one of the many calling cards of this pagan religious cult. Yet law enforcement in charge of the Delphi investigation seemingly and quickly abandoned the obvious correlation.
Real quick, Dr. Corbeau saying if there really was an F room, fehu equals fee, as in a debt/price. So I don't know. I don't know anything about that. So take his word for that. I don't know.
And they individuals who are named in the court documents. Look, man, the overall authoritative leadership in charge of this case did not provide the evidence given by the honest investigators on the task force who attempted to provide the evidence to the leadership. The command never gave it to the judge or the prosecutor. They withheld the evidence. And there's a reason for that. And I think that it goes so much deeper. They're involved in the prison system. You had Odinites who were legitimately wearing the runes as patches on their prison guard uniforms while they were listening to every single conversation that Richard Allen had with his wife, with his attorneys, everything. It's one of the craziest stories of all time. And a federal agent who was one of the 3 on the task force who were actually investigating and prioritizing Odinism and their connection to the murders, he was murdered.
Oh yeah, I remember seeing something about that. I remember hearing something of that, and didn't they? And correct me if I'm wrong, but that's when they shut the investigation, isn't it?
Yeah, the feds got out of the investigation right then,
which is insane. That when I heard that, just the idea that the feds would get involved, one of their own get offed, and then they just go, "Oh, we're out."
100%.
What? Like you would think, like with the way that the empire is, that like that's when they go, oh really? Well, we're gonna fuck you up. Like, but no. So what is going on there? What game is at play? What the fuck?
And that federal investigator on that task force who was murdered outside the federal building, his name is Gregory Ferenczi, and I'm very much under the impression that he was the individual who claims the bodies were moved and all these Odinist symbols and connections were at the crime scene themselves. Because another one, forget his name, something Click. I forget his first name. I can pull it up in a minute. He was on the task force as well. He wasn't murdered, but he was legitimately forced to retire, and his character was entirely assassinated by the prosecution. It's totally insane. Like, it'll blow your mind, man. And I think that when you realize that the perpetrator who killed the federal agent outside the federal building was named Shane Meehan, and this guy was working as a prison guard and ran for mayor, like, it's honestly, it just shares all the hallmarks of one of the most extraordinary cases I've ever come across in my life.
Well, so I think that's the best place to end it. I think that we come back to it later. Obviously, that's kind of a teaser. I'm sure you're probably gonna end up covering it at some point. Yeah, I think we hit all the kind of main points. Get excited about it. So let people know where they can find you at. I know you should be dropping something here soon.
Definitely. By the end of the week, it'll be done for sure.
I emailed. I saw Sam on Friday, by the way, and I also emailed him, I believe, over the weekend. So we're waiting to hear back because he did offer us an appearance. So, but I mean, anyone who knows Sam knows I'll probably have to email again and again.
Sure. I'll try and harass you, buddy.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, but yep. I mean, I saw him in Tampa. It was cool. He hit me up. He told me again. He's like, "Yeah, just fucking email me," and I'm like, "Okay." So, yeah,
it always takes a while, but we'll make it happen.
It'll probably be months from now, but we'll be on there eventually. So we'll be. I presented the idea of doing like an everything Gladio type episode. Awesome. Kind of with overlapping conspiracies and how it always seems to be Gladio at the center of it.
Yeah, it really does, man.
But yeah. Go ahead and let people know where they can find you at, what's going on, that kind of jazz.
Yeah, man. Like I said, I'll go back to the cutting room floor and kind of condense down my episode, and I'll have it done by the end of the week. But yeah, most likely, I don't know. I'm not gonna try and make a decision now. But anyway, you guys just follow me on Twitter at UnderclassPod, on Instagram at the Underclass Podcast. the best places you can support me are for sure Buzzsprout and Patreon, and then other than that, I rescheduled the William hit me up. He's got to travel on Friday, so we rescheduled. It was going to be for Thursday, but I figured I got to get my episode out, so we're going to just do it next week. So I think that'll be better for everybody. But anyway, so that's about it, buddy.
Yeah, I actually have my William Ramsey episode dropping on Friday for you poors that aren't patrons. For those who are patrons, you can watch it today, but I also will on Thursday. I have one of the guys from the Jones Plantation movie coming on. We're going to talk a little bit about some conspiracy stuff. So if you guys saw that movie, that was I believe Larkin Rose was involved in the production of that. So, that should be fun. But if you do want to support what I'm doing, you can do over at patreon.com. It's just NoWayJose2020. Oh yeah, I do remind you guys about the morning streams. So tomorrow morning, probably around 10 Eastern, show up on my channel, No Way Jose, over on Rumble, YouTube, and I'm also streaming to Twitter for that. But like Twitter, it's like whatever. So pop in for that. You guys can shoot the shit with me. I'll be covering more stuff about the UHC assassin, going over the Manifesto and some other little details here and there, and maybe a few other stories, and continuing my reading of the Dutroux, like super duper long article I have. We'll be getting probably through just amazing, literally. Right? Yeah, it's pretty good. Like I've literally, probably to spend another half hour just covering just one of the deaths that the X1 corroborated. So that's interesting. But if you want to support me, patreon.com, NoWayJose2020. The lowest level is $2. That $2 gives you early access to the episodes, just like I was telling you about. Also, it allows you to be a talking head alongside me and Austin on these Already Deads, which are every Tuesday at 9:30 Eastern. So you can pop in for that. Also, we need to get some guests. I keep forgetting to book guests, especially because I'm doing so many damn shows. So fans, take that over. If you're on social media, say, hey, so-and-so, go on this with Austin and Jose and tag us or whatever, shit like that. Or just at least tell us, say, hey, I'd love to have this guy come on, because that way I can know who the fuck to get on here. So we definitely should get another guest on here sometime soon. But yeah, check in for my morning dump. Pay me money over at patreon.com, NoWayJose2020. Like I said, the lowest level is $2 to early access, the video chats. At the highest level, that's my sponsors, and I read them off every episode. I am my co-host on Tower Gang, at Tower Gang Toad. I have at Abrogate D's, at ZOVRACK, then at _Infinite Zeal, then Jacob Daniel of the Biblical Anarchy Podcast. You can follow him at Biblical Anarchy. Then Tim Tuttle, you can follow him at Jolly on Cleveland. And then Will Bell makes a delicious blueberry rabbit eye wine. And then a big fan of the show at Real Josh Elliott. And then Torin May as well. I appreciate you guys supporting me, doing what I'm doing. Really comes in handy, especially given my situation as of late. So appreciate all of you people out there. Hopefully we can keep this going. Follow me on Twitter at Tower Gang Jose. Make sure to like, share, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. Also we like it if you guys do edits, stuff like that too. So if you do that, tag us. We'll be sure to boost that stuff. Also, if you're listening to us, either of us on a audio podcatcher, fucking leave a review. That helps out a lot. But I love you all. Just like Fire Pixie says, peace out, homos. Thanks. See you guys. Bye-bye.